Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today. So happy to have George back for another webinar. We think this is maybe the seventh one that we've done together, although we've lost track. George, your webinars always deliver. You teased to me when we spoke the other day that this is an especially good one. So set your expectations high, folks who are tuning in. Today, we're going to be talking about reporting. Specifically, the topic is how a simple report fixed a broken client relationship and saved our agency, which has my expectations high for sure. Just a couple quick housekeeping things. Like I mentioned, this is the first time we've used Riverside for an event like this. I expect that it will work properly. Please do use the live chat though. I'll be monitoring it. And if there's any issues, I will address them quickly. In fact, someone just asked, is there a way to mute myself or are we already muted? You are already muted. So folks who are joining, you're in an audience role, so we can't hear anything. It's just live chat. And we'll send the recording out afterwards. Someone asked that. And otherwise, I think we should jump in. Feel free to ask questions. When it makes sense, I'll queue up a question for George after a slide if it's kind of in the context of that point that he's discussing. Otherwise, I will save stuff for the end and we'll leave a few minutes to make sure we can answer as many questions as possible. So with all that said, George, welcome. Thank you for being here. Would you mind doing a quick intro of yourself and Minutia before we dive in?
Yeah, let's do that. Let me share my screen and I will do that here. The slideshow should be fine now, Jimmy?
Yeah, it looks good.
Okay, that's great. So as Jimmy mentioned in the intro, we will talk about reporting today, and more specifically, this will be a story-based presentation. And we will talk about how reporting fixed a broken relationship with one of our clients and saved our agency. Okay. What agency? The agency is Minutia. We used to say that we are an organic growth acceleration agency. Many buzzwords there, I know. Now we changed our positioning. In fact, if you go to our website, you will see completely different colors. We didn't have the time to change the colors in this presentation, and a different positioning when it comes to who we are and what we do today, right? So I'm the managing director at Minutia, but I'm also the founder of Growth Waves, which is a B2B newsletter where we share bi-weekly strategies, case studies, and things that you will not find anywhere else online. Okay, it's completely free, even though we are working on the pro version. You can go to growthwaves.com and sign up. Okay, so let's get started because we have a lot of things to cover today. How did this whole thing started? The beginning. So in July of 2023, I was in beautiful Nice, France, with my wife and son. It was a sunny Saturday afternoon when I decided to check my emails. Very unhealthy, I know. I don't do that anymore, but I did that. And I checked my emails and I saw a frustrated and almost angry email by one of our clients. Okay. And there were many things in this email, but for the purposes of this presentation, the one thing I would like to share is this. As you can see here, the website traffic is not increasing as our client hoped it would, and also including a cluster project. Okay, and there was a report that was put together by our client, and this was a call for us to see the data they gathered. And of course, as expected, our client wanted to stop producing the piece of content for this topic cluster, which was a suggestion by our team, by our company, and roll back the engagement. Okay. Of course, reading this email on a Saturday afternoon is is not good, right? And I felt terribly after reading it. In short, what was described in this email, or how I could transmit it to you, our client was not happy with a strategic recommendation we made. They didn't want us to continue working on this project, and they wanted to roll back the engagement. Okay. Now, just to give you some context, we a few months prior to that, we introduced a new topic cluster. Okay. the topic cluster had a very strong connection to the product. There was an opportunity for consolidating existing content, which was, spread across the blog in, like different like blog posts. So it was a great opportunity for us to merge pieces of content and have a kind of a centralized base for everything around that topic. And there was also potential for generating revenue if things, of course, worked out well. But of course, right when I received that email, I knew that the topic cluster required more work to be completed, right? We already, the work we've done up to this point already demanded a considerable investment from our client. And of course, we didn't meet our client's expectations, right? We fell short, not on execution, because the outputs were there, but on the outcomes that both our client and us expected and obviously craved for, right? Now, after reading this email, I found myself stuck in a thought loop. We got it wrong, obviously. We disappointed our client, and because of we disappointed our client, this may hurt our reputation, right? Now, my response was right. It felt right at that moment of time in time, but in retrospect, and you will see, moving forward, why it was wrong. In retrospect, it was wrong, right? But back then, as you can see here, I replied that the initial performance of the hub was promising. Its performance has now plateaued. Okay, we believed and wanted the topic cluster to perform better. However, the growth has stalled, and even though we did the best we could in terms of execution, right? So, contemplating all this, I realized that, it seems that there is a gap here. Yes, we did many things wrong in this engagement, but all these things aside, it seems that there is a gap here, because even though my response was that, you're right. I mean, you're sharing data with me. You put together this report. What can I say? What are my counter arguments, and what can I say different from like your narrative, right? I can't beat it under no circumstances. Why? Because we didn't have any data, we didn't have any reporting whatsoever to go there and say that, this is not exactly how things are. Okay, so I decided to take action. Okay, now this happened late in July, and early in August we started from a search for talent on Upwork to help us build a report. That was our starting point, and we started early in August to do the search for an agency or a freelancer to help us. And as you can see here, we found a company that could help us, and we moved communications to email. And as you can see here, the first email was sent on August 4th. Okay, the last email in this thread, obviously, now we have different threads because we are working together, but the last email was sent on January 5th. Okay, and as you can see here, there were quite a lot of emails to get to the point of, okay, this thing is ready, we can roll it out to our clients. Okay, there was a lot of communication, a lot of back and forth, a lot of me trying to explain what we need, and also a lot of pushback, because as you can see here, the Looker Studio expert, we found at some point, this is like almost 3 weeks from the moment we started talking to them, respectfully declined because this whole thing sounds a bit like over the top and maybe too complicated, right? Maybe it was my weakness in like articulating what we need, or maybe it was that the Looker Studio expert didn't really understand what I had in mind. Okay. A few days later, I watched a webinar on YouTube, and this webinar was the guest was Andrea Volpini, and he was talking about Google Data Studio. now Looker Studio, and how you can use Looker Studio to structure SEO data and build intuitive reports. Okay, and I was hooked. And after I watched this webinar, which was kind of touching on like what I had in mind and describing what I had in mind for what I want to build, I decided to reach out to Andrea because I knew him and we kind of have a relationship and knew each other from LinkedIn. And so I did. Okay, I reached out to Andrea and I asked for help. I watched your webinar and kind of tried to describe what I have in mind. Okay, as you can see here, this is August 29, a few days after I got quote unquote rejected by the Looker Studio expert. And Andrea got back to me. In fact, he got back to me the same day. Okay, and he said, "Sure, let's start." Right. And first of all, thank you to Andrea Volpini for finding the time to jump on this call, and most importantly, for opening my eyes, because what he told me is that what you have in mind is doable, right? You can do it. And he kind of showed me the ropes and established a foundation, at least in my mind, over how we can achieve what I had in mind. Okay. Now, this was the call with Andrea was the beginning of me better be able to grasp what like I want us to build and better be able to articulate that and communicate that to the Looker Studio expert I was in contact with. Okay. Now, let's take a step back and like describe how this thing works. So the way it works is the following, and obviously we will dive deep into most of these items you can see in this slide. First of all, you need to have a database, okay? Especially if you are an agency and you want to report on the results you bring for your clients, you need to have like a centralized base where a repository, so to speak, where you can go there and put URLs and also be able to have identifiers for knowing that, you know what, this URL is for a client that's called X. Okay. We use Google Sheets as our database. You will see how this looks like in a minute, but you can also use BigQuery. Okay. It may be a bit more complicated with BigQuery. I'm sure you will have more capabilities, but Google Sheets can work just fine. I know because we have built this thing and I know it works. Then you need access to two data sources, Google Analytics 4, GA4, and keep in mind that conversions should be set up to be able to report on results beyond just traffic. And also you need access to Google Search Console data, which is easier, okay? You need Looker, and of course, when you have an account with Looker, you can go there and add data sources for each of your clients, in our case as a content marketing agency. And after we do that, we add these data sources to the report that we want to build for any of our clients. Okay. Then what we do, and this is where things get interesting, and this was the main reason why I had to have a discussion with someone like Andrea and ask his thoughts on how this can be implemented. Blended data sources, okay? Because you have a data source, which is your repository of URLs, which is Google Sheets, but you also have two different data sources. How can you report on results or how can you get performance data for the pages you have here for GA4 from GA4 and GSC? Well, you can do that through a thing that's called blended data sources. Okay, and what we do then is that we blend the data using Looker Studio's blended data sources and be able to to show the impact of our work. That's the name impact report to our clients. Okay, but that's not enough because this is a living thing. Okay, it's not static. you have to go there, and especially for us as an agency, we work with clients. We publish pages consistently. In some cases, it could be blog posts. In other cases, case studies, landing pages, whatever, right? So we send reminders weekly to on specific channels on Slack for the person responsible for that task to go back to our database and insert the pages that have been published that week. Okay. And then, of course, the process starts again. Like we use the data and we try to tie these pages to like data from GA4 and GSC and so on and so forth. Now, as I mentioned, first you need a database. Okay, this is our database. As you can see here, nothing fancy. Okay, we have 4 columns. I exclude this ordering column. We have the page URL. Obviously, you need that. For us as an agency, because we do different things with each client, and we need to have different, and we need to have a way of like knowing how each of the services or deliverables in this case impacts performance. As you can see, we have a column that's called deliverable, and it could be content piece, it could be content update, it could be content brief, and so on and so forth. If there is a target keyword, not all of the pieces we produce have a target keyword because SEO is not always the objective, right? We will place it here. And then of course we need to have the name of the client to be able to filter results in Looker Studio and display performance data for this client. One thing that's very important here is that, as you can see, we have content database and content database GA4. The reason for that is because if you've ever opened a GA4 account, you will see that URLs are not displayed in full. Okay. In fact, I don't know if you can see that, but what we have here is for a full URL, obviously, that includes the domain and HTTPS and whatnot. But what we have here to be able to tie this URL to a specific URL on GA4 and be able to get performance data is /blog/timeline apps. Okay, this is a content piece. The target keyword is timeline apps. I will not name the client, and you get the point. And this is done automatically through a formula that our Google Sheets expert has built. And essentially, the content database GA4 tab is a mirror of the content database tab. Okay, just it kind of displays URL in a format that's like acceptable or easy for us to match URLs with how GA4 URLs are being displayed. Okay. Now, keep in mind that you need to build that mirror of your main sheet for mapping URLs to GA4 data. You need to include identifiers, especially for us as an agency. That's extremely important. For example, client name, to be able to scale this on Looker Studio. And you need to be able to automate as much of the data entry as possible. That's a part, if I'm being honest, that we are still working, because as I mentioned, we have these notifications on Slack every Friday, but still a person needs to go there and manually insert the URLs. Okay, but we are working on it, and moving forward, I would like to automate as much of it as possible. Now, how does the report look like? It looks like this. Okay, and by the way, it looks better now because it has the new brand colors that we have. So we have 3 pages here. We have organic search with data from Google Search Console. You have conversions with data from Google Analytics 4, GA4, and you have digital PR with data from GA4. Okay, digital PR I'm not going to cover because it's kind of outside of the scope of this presentation, but essentially this is where we report the impact of the brand mentions and the links that we build for clients. Okay, in a similar way that we report on the impact that our pieces of content, our content updates have for a client. So what do we see here? And why this is extremely important for us and for our clients? Because as you can see here, We have number of pages by deliverable. This is why the identifiers that I mentioned earlier are important. We have 150 pieces of content left published for this client and 2 content updates. Okay, and now you can see, how, like, since these are Google Search Console data, you can see the traffic that not the website generates, that Minucia's work generates. Okay, on a daily basis, impressions, clicks and impressions, and clicks by deliverable. Okay, and you also have some scorecards here with like number of impressions, content update clicks, the number of clicks generated by any hubs that we have built for these clients, and the number of clicks generated for different deliverables that we may have delivered to this client. Okay, now this is another one, and it's very interesting because you can see here that for this client we have content briefs, we have content pieces, we have content updates, and even landing pages that we create. And for all these things, you can sort of isolate it through this report, through the impact report, and see how many clicks our like content updates have generated per day, our landing pages, our content pieces, our content briefs, and so on and so forth. Okay. Then in that same page, which is organic search, we have performance by page, and we can obviously sort by the number of clicks or impressions and so on. We have performance by keywords, right? And also device performance, country performance, and so on and so forth. Okay. Now the second page is conversions, and here we have data from GA4. Okay. As you can see here at the top, we can see sessions by deliverable, conversions by deliverable, how many conversions were created by our content pieces, our content updates, or anything else we may have done for this client. Okay, and also page number by deliverable. Okay, a similar view with the previous one, with the only change that this is data from GA4. Okay, blended with our content database. Okay, then we have page performance, and we also have an overview of the events. Events, by the way, are very important, and you need to have that set up to be able to talk about impact, right? Because I know that it's not just about content marketing should not be just about like driving pipeline or revenue or whatever, but I find increasingly useful the fact that we can go back to a client call or whatever and say that, what, like what we are doing drives pipeline. Shouldn't we do more of it? Shouldn't we focus on these topics that we see that drive revenue? So it makes conversations easier. Not that traffic is not important, of course, right? Traffic is the main vehicle, because without traffic, there can't be any like conversions whatsoever. Okay. Then we have best keywords by session and best keywords by conversions, right? Very useful, because you can go there and say, okay, so wait a minute, these keywords generate conversions. Shouldn't we target those in paid search? Should we talk more about these topics and see what's out there? Yes, you should. That's the answer. You would be surprised by the fact that like many companies are reluctant to, like, they see the data and they are reluctant to do something about it, right? And then at the bottom of this page of the report, we have general performance, like device performance, country performance, and so on and so forth. Okay. Of course, blended data sources, which is an integral part of this whole process, are not fun and they are not easy. Okay. And in my case, and in our case, the difficult part was being able to articulate what we need to our Looker Studio expert. But rest assured that you may work with the best expert in the world. If you don't have a very solid, very clear view over what you want to achieve, how you envision this report to be, no one is going to help you, because we were able to go back to this Looker Studio expert when we had the content database built, and when I had sort of a very good idea of like, this is how I envisioned, this is how I want the data to be like blended together, and that's how I would like us to communicate our impact, right? So you can see here in just one report how many blended data sources are included. Okay, three things that I would like to share here regarding this this part of the whole process. Join operator. You should choose inner join when you blend your data, so that only the data that has matching values in both left and right data sources is included in the blended data source that you will create. Mapping. You should make sure that you're mapping only equal things. For example, a dimension from one data source to a dimension from another data source. This may be a reason why you don't see your report is not displaying data correctly. And you should like be prepared that, which obviously is affected by what kind of information you want to display. Most likely for a report like the one I shared with you, you will have several blended data sources. One blended data source will not be enough, okay? And of course, this is the last part of the process. As I mentioned, we have a weekly reminder sent on a specific Slack channel, and it prompts the person responsible to go back to the content database and the digital PR database through another reminder to populate it and add all the URLs that were published that specific week. Okay, and of course, this is the one part of the process that I would like us moving forward to automate as much as possible. Okay, now we did all this effort. It was also a significant investment for us, and you may wonder what's the aftermath. Okay, what was the impact like to the relationship I mentioned in the beginning, and also for us as a business, right? Before I share that, let me just say that you should prepare going into that a process like this, that you will get objections and pushback. Okay, some people may say, and rightly so, GA4 samples data and GSC doesn't even show you all keywords a page has visibility for. That's right, you can't beat that, right? However, the thing is that when it comes to online data, I have acknowledged, and I'm okay with the fact that there's no perfection and 100% accuracy. And what I'm looking for is data that is enough for us to make better decisions or build impact narratives that are enough to go to a conversation with the client and build our arguments around something that we want to suggest, a different direction that we want to take, and so on and so forth. GA4 is not accurate. You may get that from people. That's fine. Your answer should be exactly that. That's fine. Give me one data source, online data source, that's 100% accurate. I don't think you will find one, okay? And once again, I'm okay with that, because I'm not optimizing for accuracy. I'm optimizing for having something that can help us build impact narratives. That's what I'm interested in, okay? What you're looking to build is not possible. People may tell you that, but if you dig a bit deeper and you seek for answers, you will find answers, right? And of course, you may get, especially from bigger companies that can afford these kind of tools, can we just add some Mixpanel, Amplitude, HubSpot, whatever data in there? The answer is yes, you could, right? But I like to keep things simple, and especially for us as an agency, building a template that accommodates sources like Mixpanel and Amplitude is not the best thing to do, because not all companies we work with can afford or even want to have these tools, okay? But for the most part, GA4 and GSC is something that most companies have, okay? Now, going back to that email we received about, things are not going well. Your suggestion, it's not working. It's not driving traffic. And in general, the traffic of the website, is not increasing as we'd hoped. Okay. Back then, the concern of our client was right. How could we beat that? What could we say, to beat that? We didn't have any data whatsoever. Fast forward a few months, as you can see here, we can see that 4 out of 10 pages, of course you can't see that, but I can tell you that. And if you want, you can believe me, of course. But 4 out of the 10 pages in the top 10 in terms of conversions generated were from the topic cluster we built. Okay. In fact, the number one page in terms of conversions comes from that topic cluster. Okay. Of course, back then we didn't know. I didn't know. And in my mind, the answer I gave was like the best. I gave an answer to kind of alleviate the situation at the moment and address our clients' concerns, which were super valid, right? However, when you dig a bit deeper into things, you can see that, well, you know what? Maybe things are not exactly as we initially thought, because we have some data here, and these data paint a somehow different picture. Okay. And in terms of traffic, which was also mentioned in that email, as you can see here, this is not traffic from the whole website. Okay. Of course, I care about, the whole website going well, generating traffic, getting attention, like generating conversions and whatnot. But in an agency-client relationship, what I'm most interested in is what is the impact that we bring, right? And if anything, the content our team produced seems to be performing well and definitely not declining in terms of traffic. But back when I gave that answer, which at the time seemed the best thing to do, I didn't have this chart. I couldn't present it, right? But of course, now we do. Now, after all these things, and fast forward a few months, of course, we reached out to our client to explain, we know how you feel about the topic cluster, and you have every right to feel that way. But we dug a bit deeper into the analytics and performance and discovered that things may not be exactly as we thought they were. Okay. We searched the impact report, and that's obviously not, that doesn't apply just to this client, but to all of our clients. They put over it, verified the performance, and thanked us for the insights. Okay. Now, looking back, this experience taught me 4 things. First of all, to treat client concerns as opportunities. You should, or we should, I guess, I have to hear it as you have to hear it. We should take our clients' concerns very seriously and treat them as opportunities to become better. Because I think that in a way, even though that email, being read by me on a Saturday afternoon, late in July, it may felt, that's not how I want to spend my Saturday afternoon. But in retrospect, it served as a wake-up call for us to say that, what, we have to do something about reporting, because there's no way for us right now to beat like any argument on the basis of performance. We simply can't. Okay. And so it served as a wake-up call to go back and say, okay, we need to fix that. Okay. And of course, fix that we did. Okay. Now, experimentation is fine. And the reason why I have this here is because the suggestion we made, first of all, when we make suggestions or recommendations to our clients, we always, and that's what I try to transmit to our team, that you should always think as if this is your business. If it's your business, like, would you do that? If the answer is yes, then you should go back and with confidence suggest it to the client. Okay. And so even though, the topic cluster was a bit kind of risky because there were pages here and there and we could have lost some traffic, in retrospect, I think that I do not regret it, not just because of like the aftermath and the fact that it it goes really well, but experimentation is fine, right? It's okay to experiment with things. However, you should always be able and prepared to bring data to the conversation, something that we content marketers are not good at. In fact, we get very defensive about this very often because, like content marketing should build brand, and we can't like deal with traffic right now because we have a brand to build and whatnot. Yes, one of the objectives may be increasing your brand value and all these like great things, but in order to get there, you need to have what I call performance capital, which means that you have to be able to sow something to be able to tell that, you know what, you see that we have this great program that like generates pipeline and also revenue, and I want like a 10 or 20% of my budget this quarter to go to this like interesting idea that I would like to test out that will not generate pipeline or revenue, at least not like it will not be instant, but the scope is a bit different. The objective is to, to enhance our brand and whatnot. Okay. And the fourth one, as Ryan Holiday would put it, stillness is the key. Very often things may not be exactly as we thought they were, as in our case. And I would say that after sending this email to our client, which of course we should do because they had a concern and we should like address that concern, we didn't say anything else to anyone. We were working to our report and we were working on it silently. Okay. When we felt that, okay, this is it, the data look good, we should roll it out, this is when we reached out and we shared the reports, and the rest is history. Okay. That would be it.
Awesome. Thank you, George. And just a reminder to folks that we will send the slides around as well. There's a lot of detail in there. So if people want to go through them later on, you'll have a chance to do that in the slides. I have a couple questions myself. Kira sent in a question. If other folks have questions, drop them in the chat and I will queue them up for George. The first one I wanted to ask you, George, is you mentioned this idea of building an impact narrative. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because there's data and dashboards, then it also has to be communicated. So could you talk a little bit about how your team communicates that? Do you all have recurring meetings with customers? Is there a process for the way that you present data? Do you deliberately kind of wrap it in a story to tell them, or any detail you can provide about that part of Minucia's process would be really interesting.
I think that there is so much you can say about like communicating the value of your work, and it's not me saying. I mean, we interviewed almost 700 people with the State of Content Marketing report we did, and one of the concerns was, how to communicate the value of my work, right? And imagine to have to do that as an agency. It's very tough. Obviously, data is one thing, and we do that. The other thing we try to do is like, this concept of building performance capital, and then be able to go to meetings with a bit more confidence about like what we do and what we want to do and so on. I think that content marketers should start being a bit more explicit about like the impact that they bring, and also try to understand that just because you know that this thing will not like bring results this quarter, but it may bring results next quarter, and it's a kind of a bet, doesn't mean that the people above you know that. So you should be very like upfront and explicitly say that, what, this is what's expected here. Okay. Now, having that said, I think that which is getting more difficult especially for B2B. I think that to be able to, to build performance capital and be able to craft these impact narratives, you have to do what drives revenue and what has the higher, let's say, chances of driving revenue first, and then be able to experiment and do more interesting things, right? Which may be a bit, let's say, not so exciting, but if that's your way to like, have a seat at the table and ask for more and get more, and then that's what you should do. But as an agency, like we are trying to communicate things because we also know and acknowledge the fact that we are what, like, I don't know, 1 to 5% of our clients' time. I'm talking about the points of contact. You can't possibly expect that these people will know that one of the pieces you produced started bringing in like conversions or traffic, or you have to say that. And every small like win matters, right? So you have to communicate all these things and be explicit about like the impact they can bring and the expectations and whatnot. Yeah, I don't know if that's helpful, but
Yeah, definitely. For as long as I've worked in content marketing, there's been a tension between content marketers who, uh, in many cases, struggle to quantify their work, and management who wants to know, is this working or not? And you see these discussions in our Slack community all the time where someone will say like, well, my CMO doesn't quote unquote believe in content and I'm having trouble getting buy-in and this and that. So often data is the answer. And I do wonder if in some cases content folks have some hesitation to tie numbers to their creative work. I can understand how that would feel a little uncomfortable, but I would say it's required, and it actually doesn't take away from the creative aspect of content marketing that I think all of us really enjoy so much. It actually helps you make the case for doing more, for doing it better, for getting more resources for the work that you want to do.
you know what? Content marketing is not as straightforward and not an instant gratification channel, sort of speak as paid search is, right? So I can understand why many content marketers like become defensive or feel uncomfortable or uneasy reporting on like results, but you don't have to tie everything that you do back to like dollars and revenue or even pipeline. Okay, but even if you talk about something like traffic, which I know many people kind of consider as vanity, because because traffic without like context is vanity, right? But if that's what you're interested in and that's what you can report like on right now, then do that, right? Don't listen to the LinkedIn gurus who tell you that, you know what, like if you don't drive like revenue, or look at this graph from Ahrefs where I saw how I did this or that. That's not helpful, right? So report on what you can report, um, even if that's like traffic, because especially for content programs that are not mature yet, I mean, you have to start somewhere. You can start like with revenue. It's highly unlikely that you will generate revenue for the first what? I don't know. I don't want to set any like benchmarks here, but you get the point, right? So you have to start somewhere. And so this is what this is all about like better communicating the impact of our work, and also understanding the importance of communicating the impact of our work, which is much better than not saying anything, or not reporting on anything. Or
Yeah, absolutely. Even for early stage programs where you might think, well, we're not going to have real results to show for 6 months or 12 months, there's always leading indicators. There's always something to measure. And if you can show a graph that generally trends up and to the right, you buy yourself a lot of trust and more time to have the runway that you need.
that's a good point. Yes.
We have a couple questions coming in, George, that I'll queue up for you, and I'll just take these in order as they come in. Kira asked, I'd love if you could share some resources for learning how to set up blended data sources. For example, I'd love to be able to track top keywords by session and conversions, as you mentioned, not just by traffic.
I don't think I have any sources I can share. I'm sorry, Kira. The only webinar I watched, and then we get like straight into building the thing, was the one I started with with Andrea Volpini, which kind of opened my eyes and gave me a direction, right? And it may be the resource you might want to watch. It may be a good starting point, right? Look, if you want to build something like simple, like a table that just brings data from one side, your content database, to the other side, GA4, I think that's something you can do by yourself, right? But if you want to go deeper than that, well, then you have to, as I mentioned, have a clear view over what you want to build, and then maybe find a person to help you do that.
Agreed. She actually asked a follow-up question about finding the webinar. So if you have a link, maybe we can share that afterwards, or I can try to track it down also.
I will share the link. I will share the link.
Oh, perfect. Perfect. Okay, next question comes from Dan, who asks, could you please specify the metrics you use to show you are building pipeline and brand equity? Also, if you're able to say, what sector was your client in and what types of content were in that cluster? For example, was it blog posts?
So yeah, there was blog posts with one hub page or pillar page, however you want to call it. And then blog posts, in a way, it wasn't under blog. It was under this cluster that we built, right? Now, in terms of like the metrics that we use, the company was SaaS. Let me answer that. And now, when it comes to the metrics, I would say that goes back to like what are the different types of CTAs that exist on like these pages, right? In our case, it was a blend of clicks on the demo request button, and what else? It was a couple of events beyond just demo requests, with demo requests being the most prominent one. However, I think that if you're an agency or you want to report on the impact that an agency that's working with you you have to be very meticulous about CTA placements and be very clear, because even this report without context can be more harmful than helpful. What do I mean here? If someone, let's say higher up, sees this report and they don't see, and they see, let's say that, a page, one page at the top generates almost all clicks we have on our demo page. Okay, they will ask, okay, what about all these other 151 pages that these guys have created? Why are we paying them? Well, this is when you have to go as a content marketer and explain that, actually, from the 152 pages, only 15 have the objective of like generating pipeline. Okay, so this is by design. It's not like a happy accident that just one page created all the pipeline and the other ones are not performing. So you need, like, once again, explicit communication to explain that. Now, having that said, whatever offerings the website has, like it could be free trials, it could be, for some pages, template downloads, it could be demo requests, whatever this may be, that's what you should like report on, but always with the the context of these pages are designed for this, like we expect that from these pages, right? Yeah.
Cool. See, Olivia asked a question about what was the type of conversion, and I think you mentioned it was a demo request.
Yes.
Cool. See, Amy asked, how do you navigate getting the metrics you need when you are external? That's a very good question.
That's a very good question. First of all, when you're external, two things. The first, most actions happen on that page, meaning that we don't report on actually how many demo requests people submit when they get to the demo request page. We report on how many clicks on the demo request button we get from our pages, if that makes sense. That's one thing. What you could do beyond that, which is difficult, especially for bigger companies, smaller companies may be able to do that, is that you can create dedicated thank you pages, meaning that if you have, let's say that you offer a free trial, okay, and let's say that as part of this sequence, after someone signs up for a free trial, they will get to a thank you page, right? You can create dedicated thank you pages for your agency, external provider, whatever, and then be able to report, build obviously a goal in GA4 for like free trials that end up to this thank you page, and then be able to report on these events. Okay, that's a good way to report on the impact that an agency or external provider can have.
Do any clients ever push back or hesitate to provide the access you need to GA4 or Search Console?
No, I don't think so.
Cool, that's good.
because also
I could imagine it.
Because also, Jimmy, if you think about it, the points of contact, especially as we are working with bigger companies, they if you think about it, we help them prove their value too. So it's a win-win, right? So
sure,
like of course, some of these companies have like processes and policies about like data security and whatnot. But okay, I mean, we are experienced at this point. We can go through these things, but it's a win for everyone to be able to report on something, right? And like be able to build these impact narratives. So
yeah, that's a great point. Many teams hire agencies to, well, maybe it's to like increase output or something, but oftentimes it's to bring in expertise that they don't already have. So it makes sense that they would be happy to give you what you need so you can do your job, because it also makes them look better. It's a good point.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on GA4? Kind of a broad question, but there's been a lot of hubbub about the switch.
You know what? They can say whatever they want about Google's analytics products. I want to be practical, and on a practical level, they help us like communicate the value of our work, right? Are they perfect? No, of course. But we are not using them because they are perfect. We are using them because they serve a certain purpose, which is to help us build impact narratives. And as I mentioned earlier, not every company can afford, like an annual contract with Mixpanel and have the capabilities to set up like Mixpanel or Amplitude or whatever. And for us as an agency, it's not scalable to say that, at least at this point. I don't know, maybe we'll change that in the future. But as I mentioned, GAC and GA4 have a lower barrier to entry. They are used by most companies. So if you want to have a template as an agency that you can spin off as soon as you like start working with the client, it makes sense to have these data sources, to use these data sources, right?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Let's see, we have a question coming in from Carr, who says, I think I saw you had delineated content updates in your Looker report, and I may have missed how you were delineating those updates. I'm assuming content updates means that you're updating existing blog posts.
Yes.
I'm working through updates from a content audit and would love a better way to track results in aggregate. I suppose this could be delineated in the original inventory.
I'm not sure I understand the question, but let me just say that what we do here is that we track the traffic generated by content updates. These are obviously pages that underperform, and so even though it's not perfect, we can see whether or not a page after the update, by the way, the interesting thing about the report is that you can isolate pages, right? You can see the performance of just one page, or like a list of pages, which is great, right? And so if you want to say that, but you can also see that, because as I mentioned, there is a breakdown, right? How many clicks or sessions were generated by our content updates. And so we just treat that as a deliverable, that our content updates, generated X amount of clicks, like any other deliverable, like a net new content piece or anything of that sort. Yeah.
But you could basically tag every URL however you want.
Yes, that's why
and then sort. Yeah.
that's why identifiers are important. That's why they are important, and that's why for us as an agency, clients for sure, but then also deliverables. You would like to report on like the impact of different deliverables, and that's more interesting when you have clients you do like many different things with, like location pages, landing pages, content pieces, whatever, and we are able to kind of gather those and uh, report on the results. It's great. It's great to be able to report on this.
Absolutely. Um, oh, and Car says that answers it. So you nailed it. One from Olivia, and then we might have time for one more after this if anyone has another. Olivia asks, when measuring the conversions, are you looking at direct clicks to the demo page from your content piece or a click to the demo page at any point in the session?
Yeah, from our content pieces.
Got it. So it's a last click model.
Yes.
Do you think it would be possible to set up a multi-touch type model with this same process or kind of a close variation of it?
I'm not sure about that. Because the point of all this exercise, once again, especially in the context of being an agency, you want to report on the impact that you bring. I mean, you could factor in assisted conversions and things like that. I think so. You could do that in a similar report. But like we are interested in like communicating the impact that we bring.
Eric mentioned in the chat that he thinks you can track sessions that started with a landing page that lead to a conversion in GA4, but says don't quote me on that. That's worth checking, though. That would be interesting. Okay, cool. We're just about out of time. George, you delivered again. That was a fantastic presentation. Thank you so much for being here. We really value the partnership with Minutia. Minutia, by the way, is also producing Superpass podcast and has been doing a wonderful job on that. So that's another one of the many things that Minutia offers that could potentially help other companies with as well. So definitely go check out minutia.com. We'll, of course, send out the recording. We'll send out the slides. We'll send out links to George's LinkedIn, to the Minutia website, to Growth Wave. So you'll have all of that in your inbox here shortly. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming, for asking great questions. We really appreciate it. And we have another one of these scheduled for later in the year. So we'll have that to look forward to.
Thank you.
George, as always, appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you, too. Thank you, everyone.